In today's podcast, you'll learn vocabulary connected to insurance so that you can feel perfectly safe and fully insured when you're driving, when you're skiing, when you're climbing mountains, and hopefully at the same time listening to us. Welcome to
Aprender Inglés with Reza and Craig.
Hello and welcome, especially if you're a new listener to the podcast. With more than 50 years of teaching between us, Reza and I are going to help you improve your English and take it to the next level. Reza, my friend, I haven't seen you since July.
Yes, we're recording this podcast in September. As you know, if you're a regular listener, we record usually 3 episodes in one day, and we release an episode every week, as you know. So this episode was obviously recorded before you're listening to it.
Really?
Really?
Amazing.
Wow. Can we record it after listening to it? No. What about that?
Technology is fantastic, isn't it?
So what? Late July when we last saw each other?
Yes, late July. So how was your summer?
Good, quite eventful. I was in Ireland, where I come from, and I also visited the Baltic states of Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and throw in Finland if you like. You could call that a Baltic state, possibly, Scandinavian Baltic. And I believe you weren't that far away from Finland yourself.
No, I was lucky enough to spend some time in Norway, and I had a really restful and peaceful time there. And, oh, by the way, thank you for the gifts you brought me from Lithuania.
And thank you. Craig also bought me some chocolates from Norway. I'm looking forward to them. It's not easy to get Craig to give up chocolates, and not eat them himself.
Well, I'm trying to, because I had a bit of a shock, a bit of a surprise back in July. I went to the doctor for my yearly checkup, and I had a blood test, which was fine, but I was getting a pain, not exactly a pain, I was getting pressure, some problem with my chest. And I mentioned it to the doctor, and she sent me immediately for an ECG to check my heart. That was okay. But when she took my blood pressure, it was extremely high. It was 153 over 101, which is way above what it should be. So I'm on a diet, and I'm low on salt, and I'm doing exercise, and I'm doing everything right. And luckily now it's at a normal level. So unfortunately for the near future, no chocolate for Craig.
No chocolate at all?
Well, maybe a little. But I've got to be sensible, because that really gave me a wake-up call, let's say. It really gave me a shock to notice that my blood pressure is really high. I never had anything like that before.
God, I'm sorry to hear that, but I'm glad to hear that already by changing your diet, you've been able to lower it a bit. That's good. You're going in the right direction.
Yep, diet, exercise, and of course the pills that help to lower blood pressure.
You know me, Craig, I'm always one to take a bullet for the team, to sacrifice myself. Any chocolate you've got, which could be very harmful for you, give it to me, and I will dispose of it in a responsible way.
Well, you are a friend indeed. I mean, with friends like you, willing to take my chocolates. Thank you very much. That's very touching. Now, a quick announcement before we get to the topic of this week's podcast, which is insurance. And the announcement is for people who are supporting us on Patreon, but you will be supporting us with the iOS app on your Apple phone, because from November, in a couple of months this year, 2024, Apple have decided to take 30% from the money that you'll be paying on Patreon. So it's only for people with iPhones, and it's only from November for new people supporting us on Patreon. But I wanted to let you know, because if you see that the price has gone up, then you know why. And if you want news like this and you want to keep up with us and what's happening with our lives and everything, you can get news via our newsletter. Go to inglespodcast.com and you can join our newsletter list. And you'll also get news about my conversation classes, the dates, the times, the levels, And I'm pleased to say that my advanced group is full for the first time ever. So that's wonderful news. Usually we get 5 or 6 in the advanced group. The maximum is 8, but at the moment it's completely full. There will, of course, be more courses next month. So, Reza, what's first this week?
Let's start with a voice message from Jorge from Argentina.
Hello Reza, hello Craig, it's Jorge from Argentine, but now I'm living in Spain. Thank you very much for aprender inglés y por la mención del inglés. 2 things about the last episode, means of transport. The first, the place in Turkey where the people go to fly on an air balloon is Cappadocia. The second, hitchhike in Argentine is called Go Thumb. It was very popular until about 20 years ago, mainly with young people and students, but now is unusual and I think it became unsafe, sometimes for drivers, sometimes for the passengers. I'd like to suggest a new topic for next episodes, which is insurance. In part is related with the last episode, Minos Transport, because there are branches that insure transported goods or car accidents, but also health, houses, and much more. Thank you very much again. Goodbye.
Well, thank you very, very much, Jorge, for your message. Any comments, Reza, on Jorge's message?
Yes, first of all, Jorge, you used a word which you don't hear so much these days, but it's perfectly correct. You said the Argentine. Yes, another way of saying Argentina. It was a lot more common when I was younger. I don't hear it so much now, but you can say the Argentine for Argentina.
Yeah, absolutely. And Go Thumb is hitchhiking. I had no idea that it's called Go Thumb in Argentina. And the pronunciation of hitchhike is quite difficult because of the 2 H sounds there. You don't want to make that sound from your throat, so it's not it's more like you're cleaning your glasses. Hitchhike. Say it with me. Hitchhike. And for those interested in the transport episode that Jorge mentioned, it was episode 527. So go to inglespodcast.com/527.
So, Jorge, you've asked about insurance and you've connected it to our episode about means of transport. Of course, because I think in all countries in the world, if you have a means of transport, a vehicle, it must be insured. So you cannot drive a car, ride a motorbike, etc. You can't even probably be in a hot air balloon in Cappadocia in Turkey if you're not insured, I imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm really pleased that Jorge requested this. And I don't know why it hadn't occurred to us, because my first 2 jobs were in car insurance. So I have a little bit of inside knowledge, although when I was working in insurance office, there were no computers. Everything was on paper, and I started filing paper files for the client. So that was my first job in insurance. But let's clear up or clarify some confusing words. We've got insure, we've got assure, A-S-S-U-R-E, and we've got ensure, E-N-S-U-R-E. All 3 of those words are verbs. Reza, what's the difference?
Let's start with ensure with an E. To ensure means to make certain or to guarantee something. For example, I will ensure that the project is completed on time. So imagine that person is saying that as a guarantee. I will make certain it's definitely going to happen. I will ensure that it happens.
So it's almost like saying I will make sure. Yeah, I will make sure it's done. I will ensure that it's done. The second one, assure, is similar but not the same. It means to tell someone something to make them feel convinced about something or sure about something. For example, here's a sentence. The doctor assured John that his illness was treatable and nothing to worry about. Another example, I assure you, or we assure you, that listening to this podcast will help you improve your English. So I'm removing any doubt or fear that you may have by assuring you of something. So that's with the A.
And the next word, which is the area that we'll be focusing on in this podcast, is insure with the letter I. To insure refers to providing or obtaining insurance coverage, protection coverage against potential risks. For example, I need to insure my car against theft. And as I said in the definition, to provide or obtain. In other words, when you have a car, you say that you're going to insure your car. And you go to the big insurance company and they insure your car. So it's both the person who needs the insurance, they insure their car, but you can also say that the company which gives you the policy, the contract, they insure your car. It works both ways. It works for the person who obtains and the person who provides. They can both insure something.
Exactly. So to summarize, use ensure, E-N-S-U-R-E, when you want to guarantee an outcome. Use assure, A-S-S-U-R-E, when you want to convince someone. And use insure when you're talking about insurance policies. And remember, all of this vocabulary will be on the website at inglespodcast.com/536. It's a new website, so please let me know if there are any problems with it, and also if you like the new design. Let's look at some vocabulary, Reza.
So, a very important phrasal verb to get you started when you want to talk about insurance is the phrasal verb to take out insurance. You take out insurance. That means you obtain, you get insurance. But we prefer to use the phrasal verb to take out insurance. For example, I took out insurance on my car, or I took out insurance on my home, for example.
And when you take out insurance, the insurance company who you are insured with, they will give you a long document with lots of text, and that is your insurance policy. So that describes what you are insured for and what you're not. So what the insurance policy covers. So it's called a policy. And the person who has this policy is the policy holder. One word, the policy holder. Quite easy to remember. That's you. You are holding the policy, so you are the policy holder.
Now, Craig, you said that years ago you worked for an insurance company.
For an insurance broker.
Okay.
And we'll make the difference clear a bit later. So it wasn't a company, it was a broker.
But you did work in the area of insurance?
In the industry, yes.
So you're probably one of the few people I know who really literally understands every single clause in the policy. Because although I understand English, the way insurance companies put the words together in a policy, it is not easy to understand, is it?
No, it's not. It's not easy to understand. And that was one thing I had to do, is explain the policy to the client, the customer, and say what they're covered for and what they're not covered for. But we tended to deal with fleets of cars. A fleet is a big group of cars. So say, for example, there's a supermarket, and this supermarket has their business cars, their lorries, their trucks, the delivery vehicles. All of those have to be insured, and we would insure their vehicles for them. So it wasn't really a personal one-to-one insurance. It was more big groups of cars.
So when you take out insurance, you need to know, of course, what is covered. You need to know about your coverage. So you need to know if you are covered by insurance. So your coverage, what is covered, is, if you like, the extent of protection provided by an insurance policy, because as I'm sure you all know, there are different types of insurance. They're not all the same. For example, we could say, check your coverage to see if it includes flood damage, for example. Always check your coverage to see what it includes and what it doesn't include.
What have you taken out insurance for, Reza?
Obviously for cars, because you have to. My home, my house, my violin.
Really?
Yeah. And not much else, to be honest.
No life insurance?
Oh, I beg your pardon. Life insurance and, of course, travel insurance. I forgot. Yeah, those are the things that I have taken out insurance for in my life. Have you anything to add to that list? I'm sure you've had insurance for all of those things, apart from the violin.
Apart from the violin, yes. And the flats against fire, against water damage, the usual kind of things. Have you insured your voice as a podcaster?
No, I don't think I'm not worth that much. What about you?
No, I haven't. Not yet. Not yet. Now, I mentioned broker. What's a broker? broker. Well, my job, an insurance broker, is a person who acts as an intermediary. An intermediary, that's someone in the middle. You could say a middleman. And it's an intermediary between the clients and the insurance companies. The client goes to the broker, says what they want to insure, and then the broker goes to the underwriters or the insurance company to get the best price and the best coverage possible. The underwriter, again, one word, under and writer, is the person or company that evaluates and takes the risk of an insurance policy. And maybe you've heard of Lloyd's of London. Lloyd's of London is a group of underwriters that work in the same building, and they will give you a price and different coverage on the insurance policy for the client.
Yes, Craig, I'm lucky I've got you here because you know a lot more about insurance than me. Am I right in saying that it's possible that you insure something, you take out a policy with an insurance company, yet the underwriter could be a different company? I believe that has been the case with me. For example, let's say I took out my insurance with AXA, let's say, but the underwriters turned out to be Lloyd's Bank. Is that possible?
Yeah, definitely. That's definitely possible. Yeah.
And I may even have bought the insurance through a broker. So in fact, there were 3 different companies involved. The brokers, then the insurance company, who may or may not be the same as the underwriters.
Yeah, and it's also quite common for very high premium insurance policies. The premium is the amount of money you pay. Let's say, for example, in maritime insurance, if you're insuring a ship that's traveling, let's say, in the Middle East, the Mediterranean at the moment, where the Houthi rebels are shooting missiles at ships. Well, to insure a ship in those conditions is really, really expensive. So maybe the underwriting, the money that will be provided if there is a disaster, will be shared among different underwriters. So it's not only one underwriter that takes responsibility to pay, it's a collection of underwriters that would share the cost and the premium in the case of something that's really, really expensive. The same with big buildings and skyscrapers in New York. They're probably insured against fire through different underwriters.
I wonder if the owners of the Titanic had insurance. God, I hope so, because really they didn't get much use out of that ship. I hope they got some money back.
That's an interesting question. It must have been insured. It was the maiden voyage, the first voyage of the Titanic. It must have had insurance. I would guess through Lloyd's of London, they probably insured it.
The next word I would use is excess. But if I was in North America, I probably would use a different word, deductible. So in British English, excess. In American English, deductible. That means the amount of money you pay out yourself, out of your own pocket, before insurance covers the rest. You've probably noticed, in fact, if you've had an accident in a car, it's probably happened to you. If you've had to repair something, the insurance company maybe didn't pay all the money. Let's say the cost of the repair was 500 euros or 500 pounds. I wouldn't be surprised if you had to pay, let's say, 100 or 150, and then they paid the rest. That amount, that 150, that is the excess, or in American English, deductible part.
So you rented a car this summer for your trip in Europe. Did you agree?
I didn't actually, no.
Oh, you didn't?
No. It turned out to be impossible because I left it too late and the prices were just crazy.
So how did you move around?
Oh, public transport.
Oh, right. I didn't know.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we should have planned better. When I was in the Baltic states, my idea was for some days to hire a car. So when we felt like doing it, it was like, oh, what? 180 euros a day? I'm not paying that.
Yeah.
A day. So having a car for 3 days is like 500 euros. It's just, to do the trips I wanted to do, it would have been about the same price to do them in a taxi. I'm not exaggerating. Yeah. So why would I hire a car? Do you know? It just didn't make any sense.
Okay, so let me ask the question a different way. When you hire cars...
I have hired cars in the past, yeah.
Do you tend to get an excess to pay a lower premium? Remember, the premium is the amount you're paying for the insurance policy on the car. Do you have an excess on the amount you're paying to reduce the cost of the insurance, or do you have no excess, which means the company would pay everything?
No excess.
That's more expensive?
Yeah.
Okay.
I tend to take out the more expensive insurance on a hire car. What about you?
It depends where I hire the car. So if I hire the car in a place where I feel really confident driving, where I'm not going off-road into the countryside, where I might hit a rock or something might happen to the car, I take a chance and I have no excess. But yeah, otherwise I'd have an excess on the car.
And how often, if ever, have you ever had to make a claim? Or you can also say file a claim. That's more typical than American English. That means to request for payment based on the terms of the insurance policy. In other words, something happened, you had an accident, or there was a theft or a fire, and now you're asking the insurance company to give you some money to make or file a complaint. How often, Craig, have you made a claim?
I have made a couple of claims for my car in the past. I've had 2, maybe 3 accidents in the past, but it was a long time ago. And there's something called a no claims bonus, which means that if you don't claim in 1 year, your premium goes down. You pay less, which makes sense. The insurance company isn't paying you money. You should pay less for the premium. What I've noticed with my company is that it goes up every year and not down, despite the fact that I haven't claimed.
Your company, and 90% of companies, Craig, that's totally normal these days. No, I don't think no claims bonus really make a difference these days.
Yeah.
In the past, they did, but now all companies pretty much automatically put your premium up every year.
You've noticed that as well.
For being a loyal customer who's never had an accident. It's bizarre. It doesn't make any sense, but it's true, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. I'm pleased that you've noticed that as well. What's a beneficiary?
So the beneficiary is the person designated, chosen to receive the benefits from an insurance policy. Obviously, if it was your car and you insured it and something happens to it, the beneficiary is you. You will get the money, for example, if someone steals it. But for other policies, you might not be the beneficiary. For example, we could say she named her children as the beneficiaries of her life insurance. In other words, if she dies, obviously she's not going to need the money. The money goes to her kids. They are the beneficiaries. So the beneficiary may not be the person who signed the contract.
Okay. Our next word is liability, to be liable. And if you are liable, if you have liability, that's a legal responsibility for any damages or any loss. For example, liability insurance protects you if someone is injured on your property. So, for example, if Reza falls off his chair while he's podcasting, he could sue me. SUE. Take me to court and ask for money. Hey, Craig, I've broken my arm podcasting with you. Do you have liability insurance?
Don't give me ideas, Craig. I might take you to court for 20 kilos of top quality chocolate biscuits.
It's very common in America, isn't it? Liability insurance. So when I was there, someone said to me, have a nice day. And I didn't, so I sued him.
I can imagine some Americans doing that, yeah? There have been cases in America, there really have, of good Samaritans, yeah, nice people, wanting to help someone who's in a bad situation. For example, someone who's had a heart attack and they've given them, first aid treatment to save their lives, without which they would have died. And the person who was saved has sued them because they didn't have the right to save their lives because they weren't a doctor. There's been more than one case of that in America. Have you ever heard those stories?
I have, and I think I remember a famous one where a woman in America sued McDonald's because she was overweight.
That's something else.
That is, very American. What's third-party insurance or third-party liability? Third-party, that's not you or me, that's another person, isn't it? The third person in the group.
Right. Yes, so third-party insurance or liability is coverage for damage or injury caused to another person, yeah? Neither me nor the insurance company, yeah, but someone else. They're the third party. It's an expression, a collocation you need to know for cars. It's one of the typical types of insurance for car. It's the basic one. I think that's the minimum, is certainly in the United Kingdom, and I think in Spain as well, which you're obliged to have third party. In other words, if you're involved in an accident, whether it's your fault or not, the other person will be able to get money from your insurance company if necessary. That's the minimum you're required.
So if you're driving in your car and you hit a cyclist, for example, and that's happened to me twice as a cyclist, I've been hit by cars, then any medical bills or any lack of earnings, if you have to take 2 weeks away from work and you're not earning money, for example, all of those costs will be covered by third-party insurance. And especially with cars, there's something called third-party fire and theft insurance. So that's quite obvious, I think. Third party we explained, and fire if your car burns, and theft if someone steals it.
I would say the majority of people get third party fire and theft. At least it's not many people who only have third party, because fire and theft, if it's not included, if someone steals your car, it goes on fire, you get absolutely nothing for it. So it's a big risk. So the majority of people add the fire and theft, but it isn't obligatory. It isn't obligatory.
Absolutely. And when I bought my car, I had the most expensive kind of insurance for the car, which is comprehensive insurance, fully comprehensive insurance, which covers nearly all possible conceivable eventualities. Doesn't matter what happens. Someone scratches your car, you hit a lamppost or a tree. So that's the coverage or the insurance I had when I had my car in the beginning. And then now my car's very, very old. I've come down to the cheaper insurance, third-party fire and theft.
Yeah, let's stress that little word, nearly all possibilities, because as Craig should know, and I bet in his job many years ago, he tried this. The insurance company will attempt to get out of paying the money if at all possible. If they see the slightest chance of not paying their money, let's be honest, they're not going to pay, right?
Yeah, they would definitely try not to pay if it's at all possible.
There was a thing years ago which might even still be included in some policies. I think it may be an expression, an act of God. I'm not making it up. Act of God. I've seen it written in my dad's insurance policy from years ago. The insurance companies use the expression act of God to get out of certain things. In other words,
if the weather's bad weather.
Weather, natural things gods responsible for them. They didn't pay up. They called them an act of God. Do you remember that?
Yeah, and we see on the news at the moment, there's horrible floods in Eastern Europe, and cars are floating down the river. Well, those cars that you see on the news, they probably won't get insurance cover because it's an act of God. It's a flood. Now, there has been some very unusual things that people have insured apart from their cars and their flats and their violins. For example, Keith Richards from the Rolling Stones has insured his hands because he plays the guitar, and I'm sure he's insured his guitars as well. I wonder if Mick Jagger has insured his lips. What do you think?
I bet he has. I wouldn't be surprised. Or certainly his mouth or his face or something like that. I know that Bruce Springsteen has insured his voice. That's understandable. He lives from his voice. He's insured it $6 million. $6 million.
Gene Simmons from the group Kiss, he had a tongue extension. He extended his tongue, and he's insured his tongue against, I don't know what, maybe biting his tongue off or something. Anyone else that comes to mind, famous people?
Yes, Dolly Parton. If you're a slightly older listener, you may know her. Or Jennifer Lopez, not quite so old. Both of those ladies have insured their iconic body parts, such as their breasts and their buttocks, because they're famous for their figures. So they have insured them.
And there are some gentlemen who are involved in working in the adult entertainment industry, let's say pornography. They have huge insurance policies covering their most important assets, their most important things. For example, there's an adult entertainer called Kieran Lee who insured a certain body part for $1 million. Yeah. I'm sure that was a long-standing insurance policy.
Oh, very long-standing. Also, believe it or not, some people have taken out policies to cover them in case they are abducted by extraterrestrials. They call it alien abduction insurance. What do you think about that, Craig?
Well, if you're abducted and taken away by aliens and you make a claim, would you get the money? I mean, if you're on Mars or Jupiter or Saturn or somewhere or in another galaxy, I mean, would you get the payment from the insurance policy? Or would they say that's an act of God?
It's crazy, isn't it? Because even if it could happen, which I doubt, you're not going to be able to get the money. Also, Santa Claus, Father Christmas, is a very important character. People make money out of impersonating him. And a professional Father Christmas, Santa Claus, insured his beard to protect his persona. So he actually has a policy which will pay him money if something happens to his beard because he needs to look like Santa.
You do know Santa Claus doesn't exist, right? You said impersonate Santa. You do know there's no person Santa Claus. You know
there is a real one, surely. We'll talk about that in another episode, shall we?
Yeah, we'll have to have a chat about that over coffee, Reza. And finally, Tom Jones, the famous Welsh singer called The Voice, has not, strangely, insured his voice as far as we know, but he has insured his chest hair, the hair on his chest. He was and still is a sex symbol with a very hairy chest. So just in case there's an act of God and somebody shaves his chest hair off, he does have coverage. Reza, do you ever buy product insurance? For example, if you buy a TV or a computer or a phone or something, some gadget that's expensive, do you cover it with insurance?
Once or twice I've taken out product insurance. Once because it was completely free. I think I bought something in the Corte Inglés here in Spain, and they had a special offer of the first year completely free. Then after that, you paid if you wanted. So I took the first year and then didn't bother to pay out for the second year. I think I voluntarily paid for insurance for a TV also with Corte Inglés because it was very, very cheap. It was a special offer, something like 20 euros the first year, something like that. So I took it out. But apart from that, no. What about you?
No, I don't think I ever have. Even with fairly expensive things like a TV or a computer, I don't tend to insure the actual individual product, but then we do have insurance that covers contents of the house or contents of the flat. So if there is a fire or there's a flood above us and water comes down and damages something, we are covered under the policy for that. Okay, well, now it's your turn to practice your English. What do you have insured? Or do you work in insurance? What's the most unusual claim or the most unusual policy in your experience of working in insurance? And yes, I'm speaking to you, Gloria. If you're listening, I know you work in insurance. If you can think of any unusual insurance experiences, and anyone who has worked in the industry, please let us know. You can do that by sending us a voice message. Go to speakpipe.com. That's speakpipe.com/English podcast and leave us a voice message. You have 90 seconds to leave your message. What about emails, Reza?
You could write to us. You'll get Craig if you write to craig@inglespodcast.com or me, belfastreza@gmail.com.
And if you're a Spanish speaker, and we know most of you are, and you want to study for free, why not visit the Mansion Inglés website? And you'll find there some paid ebooks and audios for self-study. You can check out the online store at store.mansioningles.net. And if you are a subscriber to the Mansion Inglés newsletter, El Cuaderno de Inglés de la Mansión del Inglés, we have changed some things. We have continued with a free newsletter every month, but we also have a Mansion Inglés premium version. That's not the premium of an insurance premium. That's a premium meaning extra special, but you do have to pay for it. It's €2.99 per month, which I think is €3.62, including the tax. And I'll put a link to that in the show notes for more information. If you are a subscriber or you'd like to be, then go to inglespodcast.com/536 and click the link to find out more.
As always, we'd like to thank our Patreon supporters. That's Patreon. And the Patreon program costs as little as $1.50 per month to sponsor us. Apart from the increase, which Craig mentioned, of 30%, is it specifically for
iPhone users, iOS, and from November only. So if you are at the moment supporting us on Patreon, that does not change.
Okay, well, anyway, if you're interested, you could have a look at the link in the show notes. It's patreon.com/Inglespodcast.
And over the summer, I'm pleased to say we've had quite a few people joining our Patreon program. Unfortunately, we can't mention all of you who are currently supporting us. There just isn't time. But we would like to say thank you very much and hello to our new Patreon supporters. Who are they, Reza?
Guillermina Jover Arancha, Maribel Rodriguez, Gerardo, Adrià Puig Cabruja, Esther, Carmen de la Torre Paloma, Marina Pérez Trigueros, Lili, Marta Busquets, Sue Chen, Denise, Salvador Prieto Villanueva, and Isabel M.
Thank you very much to all of you and to everyone who is supporting us on Patreon. Next week, Reza, I think we've got a little bit of culture on the podcast.
Indeed, we'll be talking about a poem simply called If by Rudyard Kipling. So, for a bit of culture, look out for the next episode.
If you can make it next week. If you enjoyed this podcast, please tell your friends so that more people can listen. Thank you so much for listening this week. Have a wonderful week. It's goodbye from me.
And it's bye-bye from me.
The music in this podcast is by Pitts. The track is called See You Later.